Zeno of Citium was not born a philosopher. He was not born with scrolls in his hands, nor did he emerge into the world already shaped by wisdom. He was born into a merchant's family, raised in a world where wealth, trade, and reputation defined one's worth. His hometown, Citium, a Greek settlement on the island of Cyprus, was a bustling place of commerce, a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and goods from across the Mediterranean. His early life was not one of hardship or struggle, but of opportunity. His family had ships, wealth, and connections. Zeno's path seemed laid out before him, to follow in the footsteps of his father, to become a successful merchant, to grow the family trade, and to live a life of material security. Yet fate had something very different in store. At some point in his adult years, Zeno embarked on a journey by sea, transporting goods, as merchants often did. The Mediterranean, beautiful and inviting, was also treacherous and unpredictable. Storms could come without warning, winds could turn hostile, and waves could consume ships whole. It was during such a voyage that Zeno experienced the event that would change his life forever. His ship was wrecked, destroyed by the fury of the sea. The cargo he carried, the wealth invested, and perhaps even his family's fortune tied into that journey, all of it vanished beneath the waves. Zeno himself barely survived, washed ashore with nothing but his life. In an instant, everything he thought gave him security was gone. He had no wealth, no ship, no trade, no identity as a merchant anymore. This was more than just a financial disaster. It was an existential collapse. Imagine building your life on an idea, on wealth, on a career, on what the world tells you is success, and in a single storm, watching all of it vanish. That was Zeno's reality. He wandered into Athens, the intellectual capital of the ancient world, with nothing but his mind and his curiosity intact. Athens was alive with debate, with philosophy, with schools of thought competing for attention. Plato's Academy, Aristotle's Lyceum, and many smaller schools dotted the city, each proclaiming answers to life's greatest questions. For a man who had lost everything, Athens offered something he had not yet considered: wisdom. According to legend, Zeno stumbled into a bookstore, perhaps out of curiosity or perhaps out of a restless search for meaning after his ruin. Inside, he found a copy of Xenophon's Memorabilia, a work that captured the conversations of Socrates, the philosopher who had died a century earlier. Zeno read, and something within him stirred. The words of Socrates cut through him like lightning. Here was a man who spoke not of wealth or status, but of virtue, of character, of living in accordance with reason. Here was a man who, when condemned to death, drank the poison without fear, because he believed a good life was not about how long you lived, but how well you lived. Zeno, still disoriented from his loss, was captivated. He turned to the bookseller and asked, almost desperately, "Where can I find men like this?" The bookseller, pointing to a figure walking by, said, "Follow that man." That man was Crates of Thebes, a Cynic philosopher, a disciple of Diogenes, who lived in poverty, mocked social conventions, and preached freedom from possessions. Zeno followed him, and from that moment, his new life began. The shipwreck had destroyed the merchant, but it had birthed the philosopher. Zeno began studying with Crates and immersed himself in the Cynic way of life. Cynicism, at its core, taught that happiness comes not from wealth or possessions but from living in harmony with nature and freeing oneself from societal illusions. Diogenes, the most famous Cynic, had lived in a barrel and scorned power and wealth, proclaiming that freedom comes from needing nothing. Yet Zeno, though deeply influenced by Cynicism, felt it was incomplete. Cynics rejected society, mocked culture, and lived in defiance of convention, but Zeno sought a philosophy that could guide people not only to withdraw but also to engage with the world. He wanted something that was practical, disciplined, and could withstand the chaos of fortune, whether in a palace or in poverty. So he studied widely. He listened to the teachings of Socratic philosophers, absorbed lessons from Megarians, academics, and even the skeptics. He walked the streets of Athens in deep reflection, piecing together fragments from different schools of thought. Slowly, he began to build something new, something balanced, something that would last centuries. Zeno began teaching in the heart of Athens, not in a private school like Plato's Academy, but in the open air. He chose the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, a public colonnade adorned with murals, where citizens gathered, debated, and lived their lives. Philosophy, in Zeno's vision, was not meant to be hidden in elite halls but practiced in the marketplace of life. His followers gathered around him, and in time, their school became known as the Stoics, from the Stoa. What, then, was the essence of this new philosophy that was born from a shipwreck? At its heart, Stoicism taught that the only true good lies in virtue, living wisely, justly, courageously, and with self-control. Wealth, status, power, even health, all these things could be taken by fate, just as the sea had taken Zeno's ship. To build your happiness on them was to build on sand. The only thing no storm could take from you was your character, your reason, your virtue. Zeno taught that the universe was ordered by reason, by a divine logos, and that our duty was to live in harmony with it. External events were not within our control, but our judgments, our responses, our choices, those belonged to us. Happiness, then, was not about controlling fortune but about controlling oneself. The discipline of desire taught Stoics to want only what is within their power. The discipline of action guided them to act justly and fulfill their duties to society. The discipline of assent trained them to judge wisely, to not be deceived by appearances or emotions. In these three disciplines, Zeno laid the foundation for a philosophy that could face every storm of life. What makes Zeno's story so powerful is that he lived what he taught. He did not build his philosophy from comfort but from loss. His shipwreck was not just a historical event, it was a metaphor for what life does to us all. At some point, life will wreck our ship. It may not be a literal vessel on the sea, but it will be something we cling to, our career, our reputation, our relationships, our dreams. And when that storm comes, when the sea takes it from us, we will be left with the same question Zeno faced: who am I without it? Zeno answered that question not with despair, but with resilience. He found in philosophy a way not just to endure loss but to transform it into wisdom. He turned disaster into the seed of a movement that would shape emperors, generals, slaves, and thinkers for centuries to come. Without his shipwreck, there would be no Marcus Aurelius writing meditations in the chaos of war, no Epictetus teaching freedom to men who had nothing, no Seneca guiding Romans through the temptations of power. Zeno's loss became the world's gain. His life is a reminder that sometimes it is in ruin that we find our foundation. The things we think are secure, money, possessions, plans, are fragile. They can be stolen by fortune at any moment. But if we build our happiness on virtue, on reason, on the part of ourselves that no wave can touch, then we become unshakable. The story of Zeno of Citium is not just about a man who founded a school. It is about the resilience of the human spirit. It is about the possibility of turning misfortune into wisdom, of finding freedom not in external things but in the mastery of oneself. His shipwreck is our shipwreck. His philosophy is our guide. When you think of Zeno, think of a man who stood on the shores of Athens with nothing but his life, who could have surrendered to despair but instead chose to rebuild, not a business, not a fortune, but a way of life that would outlast empires. Stoicism was born not in comfort, but in the wreckage of a ship, and that is why it still speaks to us today, in our own storms, in our own losses, in our own struggles to find meaning. So when the waves of life rise against you, when fortune strips you of what you thought defined you, remember Zeno. Remember the man who lost everything and gained the wisdom of the ages. From shipwreck to Stoicism, his story is proof that even in the ruins, philosophy can build a fortress within the soul.